Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robert Mitchell, and I have a fantastic message for you. Now, this is part 3 of Be the Best in the Room. So if you haven't listened to part 1 or part 2, that's okay. You can still listen to this. But if you would like to listen to 1 and 2, go to my website, robertallenmitchell.com. And Allen is spelled A-L-L-E-N. And you can listen to 1 and 2. You don't have to listen to 1 and 2 to get the most out of this message. I would like for you to go listen to 1 and 2 because it's fantastic as well. We're talking about being the best in the room. Be the best in the room. Be the best in your organization. Be the best on your team. Be the best at something. And I believe all of us can be the best at something. Whether it's 1 thing or 2 things or 3 things, we can be the best at something. Even in the world, we can be the best because we have something on the inside of us. Les Brown says that we've got seeds of greatness in us, and we just got to figure out what that seed is. What's inside you? What gift do you have inside you? What calling do you have? What were you put on this planet to do? When you figure that out and do that thing, you're going to be the best in the room. You're going to be better at anybody than that because you were put on this planet to do something better than anybody else. We just got to figure out what that something is. And I believe there's 3 ways that you can figure that out. Ask, seek, and knock. Ask, and it shall be given unto you. Seek, and you shall find. And knock, and the door shall be open unto you. You need to ask. You need to dig. You need to search. And then when you start to have an inkling of something, you need to start knocking on doors and finding out what that thing that you're supposed to do better than anybody. And when you do, you'll be better than anybody in the room. You're the best at it. So I shared some stories with you about how in 1987, I started working for Get and Go stores and how I was the best in the organization of certain items. And I want to share with you the how. So 1 and 2 tells you the why or what happened. I want to share with you how you can be the best at something on your team in your organization. And the way I want to do that is this. The first thing I think we have to do is if you want to be the best at, let's say you work for a company, you're going to have to find out 3 things. What does your customer desire? What does your employer desire? And what do you desire? And remember, I like the word desire instead of want because want equals lack. I shared in 1 and 2 that there's a Keller Williams training program called BOLD. BOLD stands for Business Objective, a Life by Design. And a wonderful woman named Diana Kokoska created this training program. And you don't have to be with Keller Williams to go to it. I've been to it 6 times. And I'm not a realtor. It's not about real estate. It's about mindset. And it's a great training program. And it's 7 weeks long, 1 day a week for 7 weeks. It's fantastic. And Diana Kokoska has bold laws. And these bold laws are just absolutely phenomenal. And one of them is want equals lack. So I don't want to talk about want. What do you want? That means lack. I want to talk about what do you desire? The word desire means of the Father. And my favorite scripture is that the Father of lights causes every good and perfect gift to come down. So every good and perfect gift on this planet comes down from the Father of lights. And that's the word desire. I believe that God will give you the desires of your heart. That's what Proverbs says. And I believe he'll give you the desires of your heart because he put the desires inside you to begin with. So if you have a dream, if you have a purpose, I believe you have the ability to make that dream come true. For instance, if you were an apple tree, you would have apple life inside you and you have the ability to produce apples. I don't know what your seeds of greatness are. I don't know what it is. You may not know what it is, and you need to find it out. And as a coach, I could draw it out of you as if I was drawing water from a well. I'm not going to put your gifts inside you. God has done that when He knitted you together in your mother's womb. He put the desires of your heart inside your heart. That's your inner person, your inner man, down deep inside you. The Bible says that we're three parts. We have a spirit or a heart, and heart doesn't mean your heartbeat. It means your core. It means your spirit man. It means your real you, the inward man of the heart, the inward woman of the heart, deep down inside here. And matter of fact, the Bible says there's neither male nor female. It's a spirit. You're a spirit on the inside of you. And then you have a mind or a soul or emotion. And those things is where the negatives are. We have to change our thinking, change our world. Another bold law. We have to change our thoughts. And we talked about this in 1 and 2, that the Apostle Paul said you need to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Change your thinking, change your world, change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. That's why I have a Giant Slayer t-shirt on, because the monsters under your bed when you were a kid, when you grew up, got into your head, and we've got to slay those giants. It's not a giant out there that's going to hurt you. It's the giant in here that's going to hurt you. And a bold law is don't listen to your drunk monkey. The old ancient times called it monkey mind. Don't listen to your negative self-talk, your negative thinking. We need to renew our minds. We can change our life. We can be transformed by the renewing of our minds. What's that mean? We're going to change our thinking. We're going to go from negative to positive. We're going to go from fear to faith. We're going to go from depression to joy. We're going to go from anxiety to peace. See, we're going to go from hate and anger to love. We're going to go from fear to faith and love, you see. So the Bible says that faith without action is dead. Well, guess what? All those negative feelings, all those negative emotions are dead without action. So we want to change our actions. If you are fearful, be bold, act bold. If you're depressed, act joyful. If you're anxious, act peaceful. And if you're mad and angry and hateful all the time, act loving. Your actions and your thoughts, when you change those, will change your life. Okay, so that's what we were talking about in part 1 and 2. And we were talking about how we can be the best at something in the room. And so when God put the desires of your heart inside you, that was the good news. The good news is that your mind was created positive. The bad news is that your mind was programmed negative. And we need to change that programming. And then, of course, we have a body. So we have a spirit, we have a soul, and we have a body. The soul is the mind or the emotions. And we are responsible for this. God is responsible for our spirit. That spirit, that heart is created in the image of God. Give your heart to Him and become alive unto Him. And your mind is your responsibility. You need to change your thinking. You need to change your programming. I need to change my thinking and programming. And then our bodies belong to us. We need to change our bodies. We need to take good care of our bodies. Exercise 3 to 5 days a week. Eat a lot of vegetables. Take good care of our bodies. Maybe do some yoga and stretching so as you get older, you don't get stiffer. You don't get stiffer because you're older. You get stiffer because you're not moving. I started yoga 5 years ago. I'm more flexible today than I was 10 years ago. I'm 10 years older, but I'm more flexible. Why? Because I'm exercising and I'm stretching those attendance. Okay, so I shared some stories with you about how in the 80s, I had the opportunity of being the best in the organization in a couple of things. And I want to share with you how you can do it. So if you have a boss, and if you have customers, and you have you need to find out what all three of you desire. Now you might say, well, Robert, I'm retired. That's okay. You still technically have a customer. A customer is anybody that you want to buy into something that you have. So if you're selling retail, I'm selling these shirts. I sell these Giant Slayer shirts for $20. If you buy one, you're my customer. You might be retired. You might not be selling something for money, but you might want your grandchildren to buy into your morals. You might want your children to buy into something. You might want your neighbor to buy into something, you see. So Dale Carnegie wrote a great book in 1938 called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And you might want to influence somebody. I'm going to call that your customer. Somebody that you want to influence, that you want to help, is your customer. And then the second person we need to be aware of is our workmates. So you might have an employer, or you might have employees. If you're a one-man show business, one-person show business, you would have vendors and suppliers and referral partners and other companies that you work with. So you'd have a customer and you would have somebody that you work with, whether it's your employees or your employer. So let's just assume you have a job. It sounds like this. You need to find out what your customer desires. You need to find out what your employer desires, and then you need to find out what you desire, and you need to find the least common denominator on all of those people, all these people, you, your boss, your employer, and your customer. If you can find that, you'll be the best in the room. You see, so what I'm talking about is sometimes we can't see the trees through the forest. Sometimes we see the big picture. Now, there's a great book out there called The One Thing, and it's written by a guy named Gary Keller that created Keller Williams Realty. And I love Keller Williams, by the way. I love K's, actually. My wife's name is Kira. My daughter's name is Kristen. My company's name is Quick Dry, spelled with a K. We do water restoration and water damage. And then, of course, Keller Williams is a great real estate organization that I work with. And then Diana Kokoska is the one that created Bold, and Kokoska starts with a K. So I love K's. Anyway, what I'm talking about is that we need to find the common denominator on your customer, your employer, and yourself. If we can find out what all three of you people, us, are looking for, then you can make it happen. So what I was going to say is Gary Keller in his book, The One Thing, he said, and his one thing is not the same as what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you can do one thing better than anybody else. He talks about in his book, The One Thing, is that you can do one thing that will eliminate other things or make them easier. So that's a fantastic book. You should get it. The One Thing. It's not what I'm talking about here, but it goes along with it, and it is a terrific book. But he says, start small, go big. We want to go big. We want to go forest. We want to see the forest, and we don't want to see the trees. We need to start with the tree. We need to start with the seed. A lot of people think, they say, God is such a mystery. I don't think so. I know exactly how God works. He always works small, like a seed, and he always works invisibly or hidden, and that's like inside us. Think about a seed. He takes this baby tiny little seed and he hides it in the dirt, and then he asks you to have faith to water that seed, and one day that seed will be a giant oak tree. That oak tree won't be a seed in one day, that oak tree won't be an oak tree in one day. That seed won't be an oak tree in one day, but one day it will be an oak tree, and that's faith. So faith in God knows that he starts small and he starts on the inside. So God's going to start working with you on the inside, the desires of your heart, the gifts that you have, that one thing that you can do better than anybody else, that purpose, that calling is on the inside of you, and it's hidden, and you need to find it. Matter of fact, the Apostle Paul calls your spirit, your inner man, he calls it the hidden man of the heart, and that's where God moves. So in Gary Keller's book, the one thing he says, start small. So I want you to start small. If you're in an organization, instead of starting big, start small. And if you start small and you find one common denominator that your customer wants, your employer wants, and that you want, and you find out that one tiny thing that all three of you want, and you do that, all three of you will succeed. You will succeed, your employer will succeed, and your customer will succeed. And that's the moral of my stories that I did in 1 and 2. That I found out, I told the pickle story, and I'm not going to get into it again, that I sold more pickles than 100 stores put together. Why? Because I found out what my customer wanted, what my employer wanted, and what I wanted. And don't forget, I don't like the word want. Want equals lack. And so I'm using want as a slang. What did my customers desire? What did my employer desire? And what do I desire? When you find that out and you do that one small thing, you will be the best at that than anybody else. So let me give some definition here. Common denominator. The definition of denominator means something that is shared. What do you share with your customer and your employer or your employees or your work partners? What do you share with your customers and your employer? What do you share with your customers and your employees? What do you share with your neighbor and your spouse? You see, I'm not saying that you have to have a customer. I am saying, what do you share with the individuals that you're dealing with, living with? It might be this. You might be a parent that works in the home and doesn't work outside the home. And you have children and you have a spouse. What do your children want? What do you want? What does your spouse want? When you figure out what the common denominator is and you do that better than anybody, you're going to be successful. Mary Kay said it like this. If you see other people with the sign around their neck that says MMFI, which stands for make me feel important. If you make them feel important, you will be successful and you'll be the best in the room. You'll be the best in the organization. All right, so the definition of denominator means something that is shared or is the standard or the number below the line in a fraction. So we used fractions last time. So we were talking about, but let me finish this part. An example of a denominator is the red hair color shared by all the members of the family. All the members of the family had red hair. That was their denominator. That's what they had in common. An example of a denominator is a common level of writing expected in a composition class. An example of a denominator is also the 2 in the fraction of 1/2. I know I'm getting tricky here. So the denominator of a half is 2. 1/2. 1//2. The 2 is called the denominator. The common denominator is when the fractions are matching each other. 1/2 plus 1/2. Or the customer desires something, the owner desires something, and you desire something. What is shared? What is shared? What does the customer want that your employer wants that you want? When you figure out what that shared denominator is and you work on that one thing, then you will be successful at taking care and being the number one person in the company or in your organization or on your team. Now, I shared this. I said there were 3 boys that had a pie. The pie was the same size. And one pie was cut in 4 slices. One pie was cut in 6 slices. And one pie was cut in 8 slices. Now, the boy that his pie was cut in 4, he ate 2 slices. So we call that 2/4. The boy that ate 3 slices, he had 6 slices and they were cut 6 ways, and he ate 3 of them. We call that 3/6. The boy that ate 4 slices, he had 8 slices. He ate 4, so we call that 4/8. So if you want to add 2/4 plus 3/6 plus 4/8, you have to find the common denominator. And I'm not going to tell you how to do that because it's tricky. So you need to go back to 7th grade math if you don't know how. But I'm just going to tell you the end result. The end result is 2. The common denominator is 2 in all those 3 situations. And basically what happened is boy number 1 ate half the pie, boy number 2 ate half the pie, and boy number 3 ate half the pie. And if you want to know how much pie they ate, it's 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1/2. And if my math is right, that's 1.5. So you've got to reduce what your customers, what your employer, employees want, and what you want down to the least common denominator. And it's going to be a small thing. It might be sell pickles. And if you sell pickles better than anybody, you're going to be number 1 in that area. Okay, I hope I made that clear. So I shared with you in 1 and 2 that I collected more money in Special Olympics than like 10 and 20 stores put together. So I started retail in 1987. I was working for a fantastic company called Get and Go Stores. And I was collecting money for Special Olympics because our corporation asked us to. The boss wanted us to collect money for Special Olympics because that helped our personal image out in the work or out in the community. We were giving back. We were paying it forward. It's PR, you see. It made us look good. And so my customers wanted to take care of people. My customer wanted to help people. People want to help people. And then I wanted to be the best at what I was doing. I wanted to be noticed and promoted and receive more money and receive more accolades. So what I did is I focused on Special Olympics. And what you focus on expands. Another bold law. What you focus on expands. So I focused on Special Olympics. So as a manager for 3 years, I collected more money. It was like a 3-month campaign. I collected more money at times than the next 20 stores put together. It was absolutely phenomenal because I knew that I was going to focus, and I knew what my customers wanted, and I knew what my employer wanted, and I knew what I wanted. And so we had this event, which was going to be on a Saturday, and it was called Sensational Saturday. And in our stores, Get and Go stores, we had 2 types of gasoline. We had Sunoco and we had Phillips. And the Sunoco stores were all going to collect money on a Saturday and have a huge event. Car washes, volunteers, you name it. People were going to come and they were going to collect a lot of money for Special Olympics. Matter of fact, we had Barry Switzer. That was before he was the coach of the Dallas Cowboys, which of course I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. That was after he retired from coaching at OU, Oklahoma University. And he went to one store and he helped them raise money for Special Olympics. Now here's the interesting thing. I worked at that store as the manager. And I had collected more money in that store than 10 and 20 other stores put together. And then I got transferred to another store. They hadn't received any money yet. They didn't ask anybody for money. And I said, what's going on? You have 0 for Special Olympics. And we have a short amount of time left. My store that I just left was number 1. So I go to this store and they said, well, they stole the jar off the counter. Small jar. So what I did, and this is where my pickle story comes in, I got a huge jar, huge jar, like a 2, 3, 4 gallon. I was probably, let's see, it was probably about a 4-gallon jar, really big, and I filled it full of water. And I asked my customers to put the money in the water, and everybody's scared to, oh, can I put a dollar bill there? Sure, water's not gonna hurt anything. But it was too heavy for people to steal. So we started collecting money at that store where the employees had BS in their mind. Do you know what BS stands for? What does BS stand for? It stands not for what you think it stands for. It stands for belief system. We have a limited belief system in our heads. And they thought that they could not receive money from their customers. I knew the customers wanted to give. I knew that our boss wanted us to receive the money for PR reasons and to help the disabled people of Special Olympics. And I knew I wanted to receive promotion and accolades, and I wanted to be a giver, and I wanted to be an influencer, and I wanted to be helping people, and I wanted to help people grow, and I wanted to help the disabled, and I wanted to help the needy. See, that's what I desired. And Zig Ziglar said it best: if you help other people get what they want, you will receive all that you want. So anyway, Barry Switzer goes to my old store. They collect a bunch of money. I'm at a store called Phillips Gas Station. And we don't get to participate in Sensational Saturday because we are Phillips, not Sunoco. So I'm not happy. So I called the Special Olympic Council and I said, I want to have a special day. And they said, sure, you can have a special day. And they said, we'll have to get a special insurance for you. And then we'll get you a bunch of volunteers from schools and cheerleaders and stuff like that. So I was going to call it Philanthropy Saturday because of Phillips and Philanthropy Saturday. They had their sensational Sunoco, Sensational Saturday. I had Philanthropy Saturday. And Friday night, I get a phone call from Special Olympics and they said all of the volunteers had to cancel because the school had a problem. Something happened. I don't know what happened. No worries. I said, I'll get my own volunteers. I made 100 phone calls to people that I've helped and trained and worked with over the last 3 years at the company. And that Saturday morning, we had 20, 30 volunteers, and we were washing cars, and we were washing windows, and we were collecting money for Special Olympics. And when my boss found out that I overcame the obstacles and I created Philanthropy Saturday and I collected more money than any other store in the company, he said, we got to promote that guy. And he made me a supervisor on that day, and I had 12 stores instead of 1. I had a company car. It was just fantastic. You see, why? Because I was number 1 at one thing. I knew what people wanted, and I knew what the common denominator was. In this case, it was collecting money for Special Olympics. Now, here's the interesting thing. I did it as a supervisor. As a supervisor, I started collecting more money for Special Olympics than the other supervisors. I got my 12 stores. We all had 12 stores. I got my 12 stores to collect money. Why? I knew if I could be number 1 in that one area, it would help the employees, it would help the customers, it would help the Special Olympians, and it would help our customers, and it would help me. And so here's the neat thing. When I became a supervisor right away, there was a friend of mine named Russell Estes, and he was the corporate buyer. And he would say that you need to get Mitchell fever. That's my last name, Mitchell fever. And he started talking about Mitchell fever. And I had this supervisor when I was a manager that didn't like me. Let's just say his name was Rick. And one day when we were in a boardroom, I had this exciting testimony to give. The vice president, our boss, used to say, we would have a manager's meeting every Monday, a supervisor's meeting every Monday. And he said, bring something to the table. Always bring something. Always bring an idea or some sort of inspiration. And most of the time, people would talk and he would go around the room. What do you have? Nothing. What'd you come for? What do you have, sir? Nothing. What'd you come for? What do you have, Tim? Nothing. What did you come for? Well, as a new supervisor, I said, I'm going to have something. I'm going to have something every single Monday. So I happened to go shopping on the weekend before Monday, and I would go through my shoes like in 6 months. I'd have a hole in the bottom of my shoes, and I'd have cracked shoes on the top because I had to wear dress shoes in those days, and slacks, and a sharp shirt and a tie, and that's what our dress code was. This is the 80s. And so nobody wears ties anymore, and everybody's casual in jeans and stuff like that. But in those days, everybody was dressing sharp. And so I went to the store and got some slacks, and I asked the shoe salesman, I said, sir, if I hear that if you have 2 pair of shoes, they last twice as long. I said, I don't understand that. I said, like, for instance, if 1 pair lasts me 1 year, are you saying that 2 pairs last me 2 years? Because I don't see any value in that. And the shoe salesman told me this. If you have 2 shoes and you alternate them every day and you put shoe trees in the shoes, your shoes will last forever. I said, forever? He said, look at your baseball glove. It's leather. How long has it lasted? I said, oh yeah. So he showed me a sample of 2 shoes. One shoe, the left shoe, was worn every day by a gentleman. The other shoe was worn every other day for 2 years. The first shoe for 1 year. The second shoe for 2 years. The second shoe was rotated with another shoe, and it had a shoe tree in it to draw all the sweat out of that shoe. And so this is what would happen. When you wear a shoe and it gets sweat in it, then it's leather and it's wet. Then as it dries, it starts to curl up. And then you put your foot in it the next day and you pull it down, pull it up, pull it down, and it cracks, and then the sweat damages the shoe. If you rotate the shoes and you have a shoe tree in there, a wooden shoe tree to draw the sweat out of there, not to be gross, then the shoe never goes up and down. It stays straight because of the shoe tree. And then all the sweat is wicked out of that. And if you rotate the shoe, it'll last forever. True enough. I had shoes after that would last 10 and 20 years. It was amazing how it worked. So anyway, I go to the Monday morning meeting with excitement. I'm going to talk about salesmanship. I'm going to talk about how I went into a store to buy 1 pair of shoes, and the shoe salesman sold me 2 pair, plus shining stuff, plus soap stuff, plus brushes, plus special socks and shoe trees and all this stuff. I went in there to spend $100, and I spent $500, and I said, he is a fantastic salesman. And then Rick says, or maybe you were a sucker. I'm in a boardroom meeting. I don't recommend this. I'm brand new. He used to be my supervisor when I was in one store. He didn't like me back then. I won't get into that. He was jealous. He was jealous because I was so passionate about the company. I was so passionate about my customers, and the people on the top saw that, and they said, we like that guy, promote him, and he was trying to hold me back. So anyway, now we're supposedly equals. He'd been around forever. He was a terrible dresser. His shoes were always scratched up. He wore the wrong shirts. His tie was halfway up. Looked like Baby Huey. His clothes were too tight. He didn't know how to dress. I read the book Dress for Success. I looked at my boss and dressed like him because that's what Dress for Success says. It's a great book in the 80s. Dress like the person you want to become. Dress like your boss. That one thing. So I came dressed to the nines, as they say. Sharp tie, nice shirt, crease sleeves, nice slack, and shiny, shiny shoes because I just bought me 2 pair. I didn't have a lot of money in those days. And the shoe salesman said, you can bring these shoes in anytime and we'll shine them for free. And they shined them. And my shoes were shining like a diamond. And he said, when I said, you know, he was a great salesman and we need to be better salespeople is what my story was. I was going to talk about how to become a great salesman at our company. And he said, when I said he was a great salesman, he said, or you were a sucker. And I said, excuse me, what did you say? He goes, nothing. I said, no, please tell the group, tell the class. And he goes, oh, nothing. And so the president and the vice president said, oh no, Rick, tell us what you said. And he goes, well, I said that maybe Robert is a sucker. And we had these captain chairs, big leather chairs in the boardroom. I'm rocking back to show you. These things would rock back, and they were just big, beautiful leather chairs. Well, instinctively, I reached down and grabbed his pant leg and put his shoe on the table, the boardroom table. There's 20 people in the table, president, vice president, all the big wigs. I'm the lowest man on the totem pole. I got his shoe on the table. I picked my shoe up and put it on the table. And I said, gentlemen, it was all men in those days. Gentlemen, what shoe is the best shoe? And everybody got up and looked, and mine was shining like a diamond, and his was all scratched up, and everybody said, well, Rick, I gotta tell you, Robert's got a nicer shoe. I said that to say that that's the kind of atmosphere I found myself in, is that I was becoming the best at certain situations, not at everything, just at one thing at a time, one thing at a time. Take the least common denominator. You know, our boss said he wants us to dress sharp. So what did I do? I dressed sharp, not because I was a hypocrite, not because I was what we call a brown noser, but because I wanted to please my boss. I wanted to do what my company asked me to. I wanted to carry my own load. I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to set the standard. I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to be an influencer. I wanted to follow the policies. You ever hear the old saying that when you got one finger pointing at you, you got somebody else, you got 3 pointing back at you? See, right? So if I blame you, what does that mean? I got 3 fingers pointing back at me, right? So have you ever thought about this though? What does the thumb do? The finger's pointing at you and blaming you. The 3 fingers are pointing back at me, so it's like my fault 3 times more, right? Well, I want to talk about the thumb. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. The thumb. The thumb, it talks about leadership. Are you thumbing your nose on the policies even though you're the leader? Are you hitchhiking, meaning you're not carrying your own load? You're not buying your own gas. You're just hitchhiking. You're loafing. Are you a thumbs down, a Debbie Downer, always being discouraging? You're the leader and you show up and everybody goes, oh God, Robert's here. What kind of bad mood might he be in today? Do you see that? The thumb tells a lot about us. Or are you a thumbs up? Or better yet, are you a green thumb? You want to help people grow. That's what I want to do. See, a manager manages growth. A leader inspires growth. I want to be a green thumb leader. I want to be a thumbs up leader. And that's the atmosphere that I found myself in, that I wanted to be a great influencer. And my friend Russell Estes called it Mitchell fever. He said, you got to get Mitchell fever. So this is what happened one time. I took over a truck stop store. It was a #1 store in the company. Matter of fact, the interesting thing is that Rick guy, he left September 15th, 1993, or maybe it was 92, I can't remember. I know it was a Wednesday. And he left the company after years of trying to get me fired. And I'm still here. And I took his spot. He was in charge of this, what we call the review team. I became in charge of the review team. He had the #1 store in the company as a supervisor. Now I had the #1 store as a supervisor, you see. And so I had, backpedal a little bit, I had a guy named Bob, and he was by the book Bob. And poor old Bob, he just did not understand people skills. He did not understand the spirit of the law. He was a great, great manager, measured growth, terrible leader, terrible people skills, and my company was going to fire him. And I said, well, you can't fire Bob. He's one of the best managers we have. He's working at one of the hardest stores that we have. He's been with us for 10 years. You can't fire him. I was the only one that defended Bob. The only one. 10 supervisors all said that he should be fired. Can you imagine that? 10 supervisors says that he should be fired? Oh, it was terrible. I said, you can't fire him. So Tom, my boss, my vice president, he said, well, Robert, why don't you take him? So I took him. And I took him and I put him in what we call store number 26. And I said, Bob, if you want to make it to the top, you've got to do one thing. And you got to do it better than anybody. And he goes, what? And I said, Tom is going to fire you if you have one more mistake. If you have one more complaint. See, he had a lot of complaints. He had a lot of complaints. It was amazing. And the supervisor, my boss, my vice president said, if he gets one more complaint, I'm going to fire him. So I sat him down and everybody said, oh, you'll never get along with Bob, because I was an emotional person and I was a people pleaser and I was a people person and he was a by the book Bob number guy, and we clashed. And I said, nope, I'm going to work with him and I'm going to help him grow. And so I sat down with Bob and I said, do you want to work here? And he said, yes. I said, well, then you're going to have to do something. He goes, I'll do it, Robert. Just tell me what to do. I said, you're going to have to be nice to people. You're going to have to be polite to people. You're going to have to get people skills. And I can help you do that. And I said, probably the best thing you should do, I said, we're starting a Special Olympic campaign. Just coincidentally, we're starting a Special Olympic campaign again. I said, you need to collect money for Special Olympics, and you need to be number one in the company. And if you become number one in the company, you will show Tom that you're changing. He goes, I don't know how. I don't know how to do it. I said, I'll come to your store Monday morning and I'll show you. So Monday morning, sure enough, I show up at his store. He's working at 5 o'clock in the morning. The sun's barely coming up. The sun's shining on a guy's eyes. This guy gets $10 worth of gas and he comes walking in and he doesn't want to stand in line. So he throws a $10 bill at Bob and said, hey, $10 on pump 2. Well, Bob looks at pump 2 and it was $10.05, $10.05. So Bob gets on the microphone, sir, you need to bring me a nickel. If you don't bring me the nickel, I'm going to call the police on you and call it a drive-off. That's what we called it when people stole gas. Well, the guy heard him on the microphone. So the guy comes back in, he grabs a quarter, and he throws it at Bob and hits Bob right in the forehead. The quarter falls to the ground. Bob is undaunted in his faith, picks up the quarter, rings up 5 cents in gas, puts the quarter in the register, takes 20 pennies out, puts it in the penny cup, and asks the next customer, can I help you? I said, Bob! And there was a guy named Paul working there. I go, Paul, come quick, Paul! And Paul comes running to the register. I put Paul on the register. I take Bob to the back room. I said, Bob, that could be your number one complaint. If that guy complains, you're in trouble. You're going to get fired. And Bob said, yeah, but the guy was stealing a nickel. And I go, no, Bob, he wasn't stealing a nickel. He meant to get 10 in gas. And it went over a little, and he didn't realize it. And he goes, well, how could he not realize it? So I took him outside. We had stainless steel pumps that were shining like a diamond. The sun was shining on it, and you couldn't see the digital. And he goes, wow. I pulled my company car there, and I said, Bob, I want you to get exactly $10 in gas. And he shut off the pump at $10, and when he did, the pennies kept rolling, and it went to $10.05. And I said, Bob, you need a diaphragm replaced. And that's why few pennies come out after they shut it off. I'm not going to get into the weeds on that. And so he realized that he was judging this guy, and he shouldn't have judged the guy. You know, there's an old saying, the customer's always right. I say it this way, the customer may not always be right, but it's our job to make them feel right. And that's what I started to teach Bob. Well, he became number one. He became number one at collecting money for Special Olympics. And then he got a promotion to another store. And when I do part 4, I'm going to share with you how Bob had a wondrous career, and it was because he became number one at one thing. You can become number one at one thing. What is it? What will it be? What can you do better than anybody else? What is your gift? What is your calling? What is your purpose? What thing can you see that the customer needs, that your boss needs, and that you need? How can you make that common denominator? How can you find out what those three things are? And then how can you influence those three things? It may not be the same as how I did it, you see, because you might not have the same gifts as me. You have different gifts. What are your gifts? What are your talents? What is your dream? What is your purpose? What are you put on the planet for? We'll talk more in part 4. Thank you very much. My name is Robert Mitchell. You can go to my website, robertallenmitchell.com, to get more positive podcasts just like this one. Thank you very much.